Many people live trapped in disorder, convinced that someday, somehow, everything will sort itself out. Carl Jung observed this pattern repeatedly throughout his work. Intelligent, capable individuals with good intentions wait for time to do what only conscious discipline can accomplish. They confuse desire with decision and hope with action, believing that wishing is the same as choosing. Meanwhile, days pass, opportunities cool down, and life keeps moving forward without waiting for anyone. They wait for an ideal moment when their minds will be clear, their routines will work, and their lives will finally have direction. They believe motivation, clarity, or inspiration must come first, and only then will they act. Carl Jung understood that this order is reversed. It is not clarity that produces action. It is right action that generates clarity. When you wait to feel ready, you remain stuck. When you act with intention, even without having all the answers, you begin to move. Jung taught that this moment does not arrive by accident. Nothing truly valuable in life appears without conscious intention. Order does not arise on its own. It is created. Clarity does not descend from the outside. It is built from within. Every extraordinary result Jung observed in individuals who transformed their lives began with a conscious choice to stop living reactively and start living with purpose. Clarity does not appear by magic. It appears when you decide to observe your lives honestly, when you stop justifying, postponing, and blaming circumstances. Clarity emerges when you take full responsibility for your time, your habits, and your decisions. At that moment, the mind stops scattering and begins to focus. Clarity is built, trained, and strengthened through the daily repetition of simple but consistent actions. It is built when you organize your days before the days organize you. It is trained when you prioritize what is important over what is urgent, and it is strengthened when you keep the promises you make to yourselves, even when you do not feel like it. Carl Jung understood that the human psyche responds to order with energy and direction. When you place structure in your lives, stress levels decrease and concentration increases. Mental disorder consumes an enormous amount of invisible energy. Order, on the other hand, releases it, and that liberated energy is what later becomes real progress. Everything begins with a firm decision, not with a lukewarm desire or a vague intention, but with a clear and personal decision. The decision to stop waiting for perfect conditions. The decision to accept that no one is coming to rescue you. The decision to understand that your lives improve only when you consciously choose to direct them. Taking control of your own lives is one of the most powerful acts a human being can perform. It is the shift from spectator to protagonist. It is stopping the improvisation of your days and starting to design them. When you take control, your identity changes, your behavior becomes ordered, and your results begin to align. From that point forward, there is no turning back, because a person who has tasted the power of clarity never settles for chaos again. Carl Jung encountered thousands of people who said they wanted to change, improve, or move forward, but very few who were truly willing to bring order to what they already had. Over time, he observed that most people want different results while maintaining the same habits, the same lack of structure, and the same disordered way of living. They want better lives without changing the foundation on which they stand. They move from one obligation to another without clear direction. They meet schedules, answer messages, extinguish daily fires, and feel busy all the time. Yet being busy is not the same as moving forward. Jung saw how many confuse movement with progress and activity with productivity, ending up exhausted without having built anything solid. They survive the week waiting for Friday to arrive. They constantly react to what is urgent and postpone what is important. They live trapped in routines they did not consciously choose. When everything is urgent, nothing is truly important. This way of living drains mental energy and leaves little space to think, plan, and grow. And still, they call that living. They become accustomed to chaos, normalize it, and accept it as an inevitable part of adult life. But chaos is neither normal nor inevitable. It is a direct consequence of not deciding, not prioritizing, and not structuring life with intention. Chaos is the result of allowing others and circumstances to set the rhythm. No one can achieve fulfillment while living in the middle of chaos. Growth demands clarity, and clarity cannot coexist with constant disorder. A saturated mind cannot focus. A disorganized life cannot sustain discipline. Real progress requires an environment and a structure that support it. Disorder silently steals energy, whether you notice it or not. Everything that is out of place, every unresolved matter, and every postponed decision consumes attention and psychic energy. Disorder fragments focus because it forces our psyche to be in many places at the same time. And a fragmented psyche loses direction, loses consistency, and loses inner authority. From a Jungian perspective, disorder also weakens the ego's capacity to relate consciously with life. When everything is disorganized, every action demands extra effort from the psyche. Everything feels heavier. Deciding, beginning, and sustaining action becomes exhausting. Over time, we start believing we lack discipline, when in truth, what is missing is inner and outer order. According to Carl Jung, the will does not grow in chaos. It is eroded by it. Carl Jung understood many years ago that success is a direct consequence of inner structure. When we bring order into our lives, consciousness becomes clearer, psychic energy concentrates, and behavior gains coherence. Order is not rigidity, it is orientation. And when orientation exists, progress stops being a struggle and becomes a natural expression of alignment. A clear mind is born from an ordered environment. Carl Jung observed repeatedly that when the outer world is chaotic, the inner world inevitably mirrors it. This is not only about physical cleanliness, but about symbolic coherence. An ordered space sends a constant message to the unconscious. Here there is direction, here there is intention, here the ego is present. That message, repeated daily, begins to reshape the psyche. A clear mind also emerges from defined rhythms. When we decide when our day begins, when we work, when we rest, and when we focus on what truly matters, we remove an enormous amount of unnecessary inner conflict. That structure liberates psychic energy. The mind stops improvising and starts executing with precision. Clarity does not arise from chance. It emerges from conscious repetition. Clear priorities are another essential pillar. Carl Jung saw many individuals work intensely without advancing because they never defined what was truly meaningful to them. When everything seems important, nothing is. An ordered life forces us to choose, and choosing is an act of psychological maturity. By defining priorities, consciousness aligns, and actions begin to reflect inner coherence. Organizing our lives is not a minor detail. It is an act of inner authority. It is an internal declaration that says, our time has value, our energy has value, and our future matters. Every time we choose order, we send a clear message to our psyche and to our behavior. We are not going to live by accident. We are going to live with intention. It is telling ourselves that we take responsibility, not as a motivational phrase, but as a practical decision. Taking responsibility means assuming authorship of our lives and releasing the need to blame circumstances, the past, or other people. Order is a silent but powerful form of self-leadership. It is stopping the habit of reacting to everything that appears and beginning to act from what is truly essential. When life is disordered, everything becomes reactive. We respond to urgencies, interruptions, and external demands. But when order is present, space opens for conscious and strategic action. We act from choice, not from pressure. When we organize our time, our space, and our commitments, we are not just moving objects or schedules. We are training our psyche to think with greater clarity and act with greater discipline. Every organized decision strengthens the habit of conscious control. Gradually, the mind learns to focus without force, and inner order becomes a natural state. In truth, they are reprogramming their minds. They are learning to function from a structure rather than chaos. And when the mind becomes accustomed to order, it begins to demand coherence in every area of life. From that moment on, growth stops being forced and becomes a natural consequence of living with direction. Carl Jung understood that the psyche seeks order as a path toward individuation, not as repression, but as conscious alignment with meaning. Every small act of order creates a chain reaction. Carl Jung observed how a simple action, seemingly insignificant, can completely transform the way people think and act. When distractions are reduced, the mind regains space. When there is less external noise, inner focus emerges. And when focus strengthens, results stop being accidental and begin to follow an intelligible pattern shaped by awareness. Fewer distractions mean greater focus. When everything is out of place, the mind jumps from one stimulus to another without depth. But when order is established, attention becomes stable. It no longer scatters easily. It no longer reacts to every interruption. People learn to sustain concentration, and this capacity is one of the most valuable abilities for building any form of lasting success. Less mental noise produces greater results. Inner noise exhausts, confuses, and erodes willpower. Carl Jung recognized that many people do not fail due to lack of talent, but due to an excess of unnecessary thoughts. When the mind calms through order, action becomes clearer, more precise, and far more effective. Yet there is something essential that must always be emphasized. True order does not begin outside, it begins within. People may organize their desks, schedules, and environments, but if the inner world remains chaotic, the effect will be limited. External order is only an extension of inner order. Without internal coherence, chaos inevitably returns. Everything begins with the way people think. Thoughts determine levels of focus, discipline, and commitment. When people consciously decide what to focus on, they stop giving their energy to useless concerns. A directed mind is a powerful mind. This also begins with the kind of inner dialogue they maintain with themselves. The words repeated in silence shape behavior. If that dialogue is chaotic, critical, or confused, actions will mirror it, as Carl Jung explained through the dynamics of the unconscious. A disordered mind produces disordered actions, inconsistent results, and a constant sense of exhaustion. Organizing life is a profound form of self-respect. It is recognizing that time is not infinite and that energy is valuable. It is choosing to live with intention rather than improvising each day without awareness or purpose. This is not rigidity, it is strategy. It is not obsessive control, it is applied clarity. When people know where they are going, when to do each thing, and why they are doing it, life begins to flow with remarkable force. Decisions simplify, confidence grows, and action becomes consistent. Order stops being an effort and becomes an advantage that accompanies every step of growth. Carl Jung confirmed repeatedly that those who truly succeed are not necessarily the most intelligent or the most talented. The decisive factor is rarely intellectual capacity or natural ability. The real difference lies in the structure with which they live. They are people who have learned to organize their time, energy, and focus consciously and deliberately. Structured men and women understand that every minute matters. They do not live as if time were infinite, nor do they waste it on activities that do not bring them closer to their goals. They understand that each day has a purpose, and that every decision, no matter how small, adds or subtracts from the construction of their future. This awareness transforms how they act. They also know that success does not arrive by accident. They do not wait for luck or ideal circumstances. Success comes to those who plan with clarity, prepare with discipline, and honor their goals with consistency. When people take their objectives seriously, their behavior naturally aligns with what they seek to achieve. If today they feel their lives are stagnant, it is important to pause and observe honestly. Often, it is not ability or effort that is lacking, but direction. A saturated mind is usually a sign of inner disorder, not incapacity. When everything feels urgent, nothing is truly important. When results do not reflect the effort being made, external motivation is not the answer. Motivation is unstable and temporary. Carl Jung taught that what truly creates lasting change is inner order. When the mind organizes itself, action becomes clear and consistent. Chaos has never been the gateway to success. Chaos disperses, exhausts, and confuses. Order, by contrast, creates calm, focus, and inner authority. Order allows people to see priorities clearly and make decisions without emotional exhaustion. That is why order always precedes great results. Begin with what is available. Perfect conditions or radical changes are not required. Start by organizing time, defining goals with precision, establishing clear habits, and caring for the environment, because this path is valid for both men and women alike. Each small adjustment creates a greater impact than you all can imagine. Every step taken in that direction brings you closer to a more disciplined, more powerful, and freer version of yourselves. Structure does not limit, it liberates. When life has order, the mind grows stronger, confidence expands, and the capacity to move forward multiplies naturally and sustainably. Carl Jung observed that the lack of organization is not a superficial or circumstantial problem. In many cases, it is a silent form of surrender. When people do not consciously decide how to live, what to prioritize, and where to place their focus, they hand that power over to circumstances, and circumstances rarely build an extraordinary life on their own. When you do not decide, the world decides for you. It decides how your time is spent, where your energy goes, and what place your true goals occupy in daily life. That absence of decision slowly erodes self-trust, because deep down, You know you are not directing your lives, only reacting to them. On the other hand, when you organize your lives, something profound occurs. You send a very clear inner message. We direct, we choose, we build. This message is not merely a phrase, it is a declaration of identity. From that moment on, you stop seeing yourselves as victims of circumstances and begin to recognize yourselves as directly responsible for your results. Order transforms the way people perceive themselves. Each organized decision reinforces the sense of personal authority. Each structured habit strengthens inner discipline. Gradually, identity changes. You are no longer those who improvise. You become those who design life with intention. Yet order is not only external. The true challenge lies in mental and emotional order. There is little value in a flawless calendar if the mind is saturated with noise, constant worry, and accumulated guilt. Inner disorder sabotages any external system, no matter how perfect it appears. Personal mastery begins when you learn to direct your thoughts, when you stop allowing the mind to jump uncontrollably from one problem to another and begin to focus on what you can truly influence. Well-directed attention is one of the most powerful tools for success, and also one of the most underestimated. Governing emotions does not mean repressing them. It means understanding and guiding them. Emotionally disciplined people do not act according to mood. They act according to values and conscious decisions. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can feel tired and remain steady. That is genuine strength. A disciplined mind is resilient because it does not depend on momentary impulse. It depends on a clear decision. When you organize your lives both externally and internally, you stop drifting and begin to move with purpose. At that precise point, growth ceases to be a possibility and becomes a natural consequence. Modern life is designed to constantly steal focus. Each day brings new notifications, messages, artificial urgencies, and stimuli, competing for attention. If you do not establish clear boundaries, the mind becomes fragmented, jumping from one thing to another without depth or real direction. Carl Jung saw how many people confuse movement with progress. They remain busy all day, yet at the end of the week, they feel they have not advanced in anything meaningful. Doing many things is not the same as building results. Activity without direction only produces exhaustion, not growth. That is why it can be said with conviction, you do not need more activity, you need more clarity. Clarity allows you to distinguish between the urgent and the important, between what moves you toward your goals and what merely distracts you. Without clarity, even the greatest effort dissolves. Clarity does not appear on its own, nor does it arise from fleeting inspiration or temporary motivation. Clarity is born from order. When you decide to bring structure into your lives, your minds stop operating in a reactive mode and begin to function with intention. When you write down your goals, you give them form and direction. What is not written remains vague, and what is vague is rarely fulfilled. By defining with precision what you want to achieve, your minds begin to align automatically with that objective, as Carl Jung understood through the power of conscious intention. When you prioritize your tasks, you protect your energy. You no longer give your time to every external demand. You consciously decide where to invest each hour of the day, and that decision strengthens your discipline and your self-respect. When you eliminate what is unnecessary, you free mental space, fewer meaningless commitments, fewer distractions, less inner noise. That space is essential to think more clearly, decide more wisely, and act with greater firmness. And in that process, something powerful happens. Control returns to you. You stop feeling dragged by the rhythm of the world and begin to direct your own rhythm. This is the point where life stops being chaotic and starts responding to your decisions, a dynamic Carl Jung associated with inner order. This is the true beginning of personal mastery. I want you to understand this with complete clarity. Order is not a destination you reach once and forever. It is a continuous process, built day by day. It is not a fixed goal. It is a constant practice that requires attention, awareness, and choice. When you understand this, you stop being frustrated by setbacks and begin to focus on real progress. There will be days when you fail, moments when everything falls apart, and situations that pull you out of your routine. That is not a sign of weakness. It is a natural part of growth. Life does not move in a straight line, and pretending otherwise only creates unnecessary guilt and mental exhaustion. True character is formed in what you do after disorder. As Carl Jung taught through integration, it is formed when you reorder again, refocus again, and decide again. Not when everything goes perfectly, but when, despite difficulties, you choose to regain control instead of giving up. That is why I insist that this is not about perfection. It is about consistency. Consistency is the ability to return to the path again and again. It is remaining faithful to your principles, even when enthusiasm fades and circumstances do not support you. Carl Jung observed people completely transform their lives, not through great strokes of luck or extraordinary events, but through small daily habits sustained over time. Simple changes, repeated with discipline, produce deep and lasting results. A clear schedule removes confusion. A firm routine reduces mental fatigue. Defined priorities prevent dispersion. These actions seem simple, but they have enormous impact because they create structure, and structure frees energy for what truly matters. That daily repetition creates consistency, and consistency over time creates character. Character is not improvised, it is built. It is the result of correct decisions made, even when no one is watching, and when there are no immediate rewards. Disciplined men and women do not depend on motivation, because they know motivation is variable. They move through commitment. They choose to act even when they do not feel like it, because they understand that true growth occurs when discipline guides their actions and not their emotions. This is the true foundation of a life that is ordered, resilient, and filled with meaning. Hold on to this idea deeply, because everything begins here. Our success does not suddenly appear in the future, nor does it arrive by luck, chance, or favorable circumstances. It begins at the precise moment we decide to take responsibility for our own existence. It is a conscious act of will that happens now, in this very instant, not someday later. Carl Jung observed that every genuine transformation in a human being started when the individual stopped waiting for the right time and instead assumed full responsibility for their outcomes. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when conditions improve, but today, exactly as things are. The present moment is the only point in time where we possess real power. It is the only space where we can act, think, choose, and respond differently. When we delay, when we postpone, we unconsciously give away our authority and allow circumstances, habits, and fears to rule us. But the moment we decide today, we reclaim our personal power. We begin to stand in our own center. When we bring order to what we already have, to what is already within our reach, we create the space necessary for everything we truly deserve to enter our lives. Order clears the internal and external noise, dissolves confusion, and gives birth to clarity, direction, and calm strength. Without order, even the greatest opportunities slip through our hands. Potential alone is never enough. External order is built through action, through small but consistent steps, through practical and intentional decisions. It shows itself in how we structure our days, how we organize our environment, how we manage our time, and how we set priorities. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything external reflects the inner world. But inner order is not accidental. It is cultivated through the mind, through discipline of thought, through focused attention, and through emotional awareness. Inner order is the capacity to observe our thoughts without being enslaved by them. It is the ability to choose our responses instead of reacting automatically. This inner structure must come first, because it is the root from which every lasting change grows. Without it, change is temporary and fragile. With it, transformation becomes stable and enduring. When this message resonates within us, it is not by coincidence. It is an invitation to move from passive observation to active participation, to stop being spectators of our own lives and become conscious protagonists of our personal process. Real transformation begins when we choose to engage deliberately. Writing a phrase with intention is not a superficial act. It is a psychological declaration. When we write words with conviction, we are not performing for others. We are communicating directly with our own unconscious. This act is for ourselves alone, to strengthen our inner commitment. Words carry power when they are charged with intention and clarity. When we affirm, we take total control of our lives. We are not making a wish. We are setting a direction. Write it with determination. Feel the seriousness and the positive weight of that statement as it settles within you. When we write it, we declare it. And when we declare it, our minds begin to reorganize around that decision. From that moment forward, our actions start to align. Our habits slowly reshape themselves, and our choices become more coherent with who we are becoming. This is how true change unfolds, not in dramatic leaps, but in firm decisions repeated consistently over time. Every meaningful transformation begins with a clear, conscious decision made in the present moment and honored through deliberate action.